people, that demotivate people.
So, fine. So I think I like your sort of aggressive way of putting that. See, this goes back to the choice that you want to make. First of all, we have set up politicians because we vote them to power. It is not possible that in a billion people we do not have people who are free. It is possible. There are people who are free. The fact is, all of us, and maybe you guys are not voting age, so we need to use our votes a little more judiciously. We need to use our votes with responsibility. And that responsibility, I can tell you, and again, statistics have revealed it, that the upper middle class and the upper classes of India are actually the worst, they are the worst voting pattern compared to rural India, in relative to rural India. Which is supposed to show that people are, either they don't understand that by not voting they're harming themselves, or worse still, by voting for people casually, they're harming themselves even more. So my first answer to you is, politicians they haven't support from heaven or hell. We voted them to power. We need to recognize that. And it has happened. We are not the first country which is a democracy Greece was a country which went through severe corruption. Italy is a country which still goes through severe corruption. But the progress they have made over the last 20-25 years in voting patterns, in people using their votes responsibility, in weeding out corruption, and it's a long battle. Believe me, it doesn't happen, it will not happen over 5 years, it probably won't happen over 10 years, it probably won't happen over 15 years. But if we do, and again I go back to the thing of who's voting, what does your character tell you? And would you rather compromise and have a quick rich situation, or would you rather fight something because you believe that's the right thing to do? Now, to your point of, it's very easy to sort of sermonize and say that at the end of the day we all are living beings and we have families to feed and we have responsibilities to take care of, and what choices do you make? I would even then implore you. One of the most famous stories to do with corruption is our own Narayan Murthy, the gentleman who started Infosys. His story is fascinating. He used to work for the government of India in a small, in an IT department, and he was a salesperson and he did not meet his sales targets one particular quarter. And when he went to his sales manager or his boss, he said, you're not meeting your targets. He said, I can't meet my targets because wherever I go, people say we will only purchase from you if you give us a kickback, and I will not give kickback. So his boss said to me, he said, listen, what's the problem? Are you not real? Do you not live in the reality of this world? Everyone has to pay. You have to pay. You have to pay to get business. And he said, no, I refuse to pay. And he said, look, if you refuse to pay, then I don't think you should be working in this company. So he said, fine, I'll go and start my own company where people can actually not pay and do good business. And that's how Infosys started. So, there are many stories in India. I can go on and on about people that I know personally who have taken a stand against corruption in their own little way. They have made huge differences. It takes courage. It takes time. It takes compromise. Yes, you may have to compromise on something. You may have to face short-term unpopularity. You may have to actually. Another person was, Mr. Kurian, the person who started the entire milk revolution of India, which happened, long, probably when most of you were also not born. It happened at a time when you had this one person, Mr. Kurian, who used to work for the government of India, and after working for the government of India for 6 months, he sent his salary check back to Lal Bahadur Shastri. He said, look, I do nothing. I do no work. I get a salary check from the government, but I do no work. So he was called by this is in the 60s, he was called by the Prime Minister's office. He said, what are you trained in? And he was a trained metallurgist. He had trained in metallurgy. And he said, what do you want to do? He said, I want to use my skills. And what did he do? He used his skills in metallurgy to go and figure out how to come up with better storage capacity for the milk cooperatives in Gujarat, which then led to the Amul movement, which then led to Amul becoming the largest milk producer in the world. And by the way, he did that 20 years later with the oil master, when he started a brand called Dhara, which was in the 80s. So there are many people, and I can go on and on about this. It's a tough choice. So when you take it, I can tell you, when you take it, you can fight. Go ahead.
But about politicians also, what you said, the thing is, nowadays still decent people are coming in, but otherwise if you have a look at the general leaders, even the best which you can choose are not good. It's like you've chosen the best among that lot, but it's still not good.
That's fine. Then I have one last answer for you on that. Then please stand for election. No, seriously. Why don't people like me or you or many of us sitting here stand for election?
So, but again, like once there's this party which came up with Shiv Kheda as a leader. Like he's known throughout, and even I see like still he lost he lost the elections very badly.
Sure.
And if you're talking that the rich don't go for the elections and stuff, even like I stay in UP, there people talk about Mayawati earning crores of rupees every day through corruption.
Right.
Talk about it, and still like whenever the elections or something, I see lines of cars lined up with those BSP flags.
Listen, what you're describing, I see it as even closer quarter. I have walked away from very dangerous situations which I have personally been put into, which was a choice between corruption or no corruption. We all have to make our choices. I am not denying that we have a very severe problem of corruption. That's why, in fact, I brought it up. But we can't accept it. For every 10 Mayavatis that may be around in our country or corrupt officers, there are maybe 2, maybe 3, in the years to come, maybe 5 people who are not corrupt. And that's the point I'm making, that it's a choice that we have in our hands. And especially I'm talking about products from places like Mayo. So what choice do you want to make? Do you want to actually fight the system? Maybe you can't fight the system. Do you want to just go along with the system? Do you want to join the system? Or do you want to leave the system? It's a choice that you have to make. And I can assure you that this is not something which you will not be faced with. You will be faced with. Very soon in your life, what stand you take against something which are just downright, immoral, corrupt, wrong. You will be faced with it. And that's the choice you have to make. It is difficult, but it's not impossible. We have so many cases in India, and I guess one doesn't have to cite them, but where corruption has caught up with people after 10 years, after 5 years, after 15 years. Many cases where it will never be caught up. Many cases where people are heroes today who were corrupt yesterday. Absolutely. I'm not denying that we have flaws in our system, but I am saying if we have people who have the courage to fight it, they are fighting it. And it's not a fairy tale, it's a reality. Yes, very good.
You're talking about Indian economy growing and people getting educated, but what about the cleanness compared to abroad? People getting educated and still they're sitting around. So how would you compare it between abroad and India?
So let me give you a perspective on abroad. I mean, abroad again is a broad term. I've had the benefit of living in very developed countries, like the Netherlands or the US or the UK, or I would say US is not even half as developed as some of the Northern European countries, where things like hygiene, cleanliness are really like the law. But I've also had the benefit of traveling to places like Brazil, or places like Poland, or places like Russia, which are not as, they are also developing countries like India, they are maybe a little ahead. I think in every place, the difference that is always made is really people's commitment to national character and people's commitment to law. So to elaborate, take a country like Singapore, let's take a country like Korea. In 1954, South Korea's economy, South Korea as a country, was smaller in size, power, and any kind of metric. It was lower than Tanzania, it was lower than Ghana. Okay? It went through a very long war period, and less than 30 years from there, they were a superpower. They are no longer even deemed to be emerging market. They are deemed to be developed countries. South Korea is talking about. I can tell you a personal example. I remember about 15 years ago when I was in South Korea on a Sunday, I saw a lot of people in the apartment block that I was staying who at about 12 o'clock in the afternoon, people who lived in the building, they had changed into sort of what looked like working clothes, and they were leaving the building. And I asked somebody, I said, what exactly happened? Is it some kind of a road being built, or why are people? He said, no, every Sunday, the whole country does social work. The whole country on a Sunday did social work. I was amazed, I was shocked. I said, how can this be? They said, okay, people who are not capable, they can't, and some people would doctors or emergency staff. But there was a time in Korea when everybody did social work, and the reason was very simple. Everyone said there, we don't want to leave our country the way we found it. For our next generation, we want to leave a country way better than what we found it. Now that's national character. Now Korea is a much smaller country than India is. Take the case of Singapore. Singapore was a swamp 50 years ago. Today, if one of us goes to Singapore, and I'm sure many of you may have traveled there, I dare you to chuck a wrapper or a banana peel on the road. I dare you to walk on the road. What is called jaywalking. You'll be fine. Law is enforcement. So national character, commitment to it, law enforcement can make changes. So think of cleanliness, for example. I mean, things are clean abroad not because people don't eat and don't have garbage to throw. It's because they throw it in the right place. And if they don't, they get in trouble. Or in some cases they say, I'm just not going to dirty my country. It goes back to, we've all seen this. And it's sad that in particularly big cities, you'll see, probably the bigger the car, you'll see like somebody with like a big black Mercedes rolling down a window and throwing out a wrapper. I've actually gone and picked up the wrapper and thrown it back in the car on some occasion. What are you doing? So, small habits can make a difference. Law enforcement can make a difference. Now, in garbage, for example, you talked of cleanliness. There are cities in India which have enforced so strongly law enforcement with garbage collection and garbage management that those cities have gone from being, case in point is Surat. They had a plague like today is one of the cleanest cities in the continent. So discipline, law enforcement, our own sort of commitment to keeping our cities clean, these things make a big difference.
So what's the cause of underemployment in Kashmir?
What's the cause in Kashmir? So, I'm not competent to sort of comment on the political angles of Kashmir, but Kashmir, as you do know, comes under a special status in our country. It has a special article under which it has been and there is a fair amount of financial assistance that India gives to Kashmir from an economic perspective, maybe through subsidies and things like that. I think, however, that has unfortunately not translated naturally percolating down to people in the form of education, in the form of degrees, in the form of employment.
Responsibility and the feeling you are shaping the students